Welcome everybody to Fashion Freedom Fighters. It's one of our interviews with Geniuses series with Kate Hanley of Ms. Mindbody. So you can check out msmindbody.com. And Kate is also the author of the Anywhere, Anytime Chill Guide. And you have a new book coming out actually in January, so very soon after this goes up on the site, which is the 28 Days, I just wrote it down, Lighter Diet, which is with you and Ellen Barrett, who's big name in the fitness world, smart fitness world as well. So that's very exciting. And I brought you on, and you do coaching. I should mention that. You do coaching with people. And so one of the main reasons why I wanted to have you on the site, and we'll talk about your projects and stuff a bit too, but you know, on Fashion Freedom Fighters, we talk a lot about healing from chronic pain and how a human body works and avoiding chronic pain. And we talk about it a lot in the sense of like, how does this thing that we live in actually work? Because that's my expertise, it's where I come from. But there's this whole foundational piece about how do we notice this thing that we live in? You know, how does mindfulness play a role in avoiding chronic pain and healing from chronic pain and avoiding a really unpleasant aging process and all of those things? So I wanted to talk with you because you talk so much about those issues, and I think that's really important, you know, piece for our readers and watchers. So thank you so much
for
coming to talk.
Tickled to be here. Thank you.
So this, I mean, I've had the pleasure of knowing you for a good long while and of reading Ms. Mindbody for a good long while, which I was just asking you before we started recording. You've been doing for almost 10 years now. So those of you out there in the blogosphere know this is a very exciting accomplishment and pretty badass. So most blogs last like 8 months. So that's an exciting thing. There's a lot of good content there. And it was actually, we were talking about accessing the inner Yoda, which is your phrasing, and I want to use it because it's so good. So can you talk a little bit just to start about like, what do you mean by the inner Yoda, and what are the benefits of sort of chatting with him and getting to know him a little bit?
Yeah. Okay. So I believe that we all have this tiny green hairless man with big ears.
Why not?
Living inside our body.
Sure.
No, that's what that's how I like to talk about our intuition or our wisdom. It's really easy when you start talking about that to kind of go like straight into pan flute woo-woo land, and thinking about it like your inner Yoda helps keep it a little more, you know, contemporary, pop culture-y, you know, like relatable. Yeah, lighthearted. Yeah, totally. Because I mean, we all have, whether you call it a feeling in your bones or a gut feeling, like we have a wisdom that lives deep inside of our body. It's absolutely undeniable. The problem with it is that it does kind of speak in whispers and cryptically, kind of like Yoda. And so if you're running around all the time, going from one task to the next and thinking of 3 things all at the same time, like, you're never going to hear it, because he's like, you know, like really quiet, and everything else is like,
right.
So, you know, that's why I'm an advocate of any kind of mind-body practice, which I define as anything that gets your mind and body working on the same task. So it could be something traditional and somewhat esoteric like yoga or meditation, which I do love. I'm from the yoga world, so that's like my zone. But Einstein said he did his best thinking when he was shaving, and so I would argue that that was his mind-body practice.
Totally. His mindfulness.
Where is my hand? Yeah.
You could actually slow down for a moment.
Yeah, exactly. And so when you do that, like you know, when anytime you are doing something physical that you need requires your mind's concentration, it's like giving a puppy a chew toy. If your mind is a puppy in this scenario, and generally it's running all over the place and barking at whatever it hears and chewing on stuff, you know, you give it a bone, like focus on your face, focus on your breath, focus on your big toe, then it gets a lot quieter. It's the same way when you give a puppy a chew toy, all of a sudden it's like, wait, is the puppy still here? You know,
right.
Like, your internal environment gets much quieter and much more orderly, and then all of a sudden it's like Yoda gets a megaphone.
Yeah, right. Excellent. I was just browsing through your blog, and you wrote a great post not too long ago, which actually I think, you were referring to one of your events, one of your Kate's Yoga Playhouse events, which we have from time to time, and our fun little retreats. And you were talking about how the theme of that wound up being space. I don't know why we keep doing space stuff, but space, the final frontier, outer space.
Yes.
Um, so could you speak to that a little bit about like making space and what the benefits are and why, how to do it too?
Well, so I talk to busy people about simple yet profound ways to slow down and get quieter. And one of the things that I typically hear from people is that I just don't have time. Like everything else crowds out that stuff. And so I really advocate putting anything that connects you to yourself, to your inner Yoda, to just feeling better. You do that first. It magically creates time. It doesn't take time away from you being productive. So that space is kind of like, saying like, I'm going to do this with the intention of hearing what I really think before I go do my 20-item to-do list. Creates some space in your life so that you do hear what's most important, so that when you go back to being productive, you know what you need to do first. You're kind of fired up to do it because you're in touch with it. Usually we avoid stuff because we don't want to think about it.
Yeah.
So you've already thought about it, so you just go do it. And then it's like so incredibly energizing that you've done the most important thing first. I mean, how often does that happen?
Right.
You usually do everything else first and then like, oh, I'm too tired to do that important thing. So and then you're like defeated and deflated. So if you do it first, then you're like, what else is possible? Let's go.
Right.
So space is kind of like, but it does relate to the body as well. Because I mean, I think our body is such a reflection of our mind. If we're in our body, like, weighted down and closed off, like that's exactly how we feel in our mind too.
Yeah.
So that is why I do love yoga, because it does create more space in the body and helps you feel lighter, more resilient, more flexible. Like I can kind of, I can feel bad, but then go do something and feel better. It helps you kind of build those muscles of doing what you need to do.
Right.
Yeah, like anything's possible if you, anything's possible if you've got enough space and time. So.
Right. True. Well said. And I just, tying it back to the body a little bit more, not to be an interview hog with like my own story, but for people who are watching and who follow my blog and kind of know my story, like, I mean, I had a birth injury, so I grew up with chronic pain. And I didn't have any kind of practice of noticing myself. And when you grow up with pain, you actually develop a practice of not noticing yourself because it's so uncomfortable to feel how uncomfortable you are. Yeah. And, had I been introduced to that, bygones, but I'm just saying for people who are trying to, figure out how can I like live best in my body, to build in any kind of practice of noticing yourself in your own skin, making space in your own skin, slowing down your life, being attentive, being mindful. It really does, head a lot of things off at the path. Like had I had that, for me, the trajectory was rock bottom. My body is just shot. I can't open my mouth. I can't eat solid food. Right. So this is where people go if they don't have a chance to kind of look inside and attend, they crash and burn. So I'm offering this for those of you watching as an alternative to crashing and burning, is developing a mindfulness practice. And it's just so much easier to get out of the holes you dig if you don't dig them for 20 years.
Right.
So, just wanted to tie it back to that.
Well, I mean, that's what I love about mindfulness is really, it's just about becoming more aware. Becoming more aware of what is happening in this exact moment, not anticipating what you might be aware of in a few minutes or a few days or reliving what you were aware of in the past. It's like literally like, what do I notice right now? And, awareness is always the first step to making any change. You just can't change a habit that you don't know you have.
Right.
You can't.
And we have a lot of habits that we don't know we have, which I think we miss talking about a lot. Yeah.
And so first of all, like just the awareness of knowing what habits you might like to change, but also, I mean, there's a scientific principle that the simple act of observing a reaction changes the outcome of the, right? I'm not that scientific.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about, right? So, I mean, first of all, there's just the level of allowing yourself to see. And then just that simple, without doing anything else, allowing yourself to see what's going on automatically begins the process of change.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I was actually,
which
I
is,
just
I
did,
mean, yeah,
yeah, I
go
was
ahead.
just going to say, I just did another interview about related things on a spiritual level with Grace Bell, she's going to go up on the website too. And she was talking about like if you are steering your ship and you just change it by a couple of degrees, like by the time it reaches its destination, it's like it's hit a whole different
It's huge,
landmass,
yeah.
And I loved
Oh,
that
yeah, I love that.
analogy. So I think that that's a lot of what you're talking about too. Like it's just the process of like tinkering by degrees in the, in the present moment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and a big piece of it too is kind of like trusting that something as simple like a teeny
Yeah.
weeny tiny little degree could actually have some massive benefit.
Yeah.
Like if I I do this. So I mean, in terms of the body, like
Sure.
I have my own kind of alignment journey, and you can sort of be like, yeah, I could pull my head and neck back, but what is that really going to do for me?
Mm-hmm.
But if you never do it, like you're saying, like
Yeah.
Grace was
Then
saying,
you
if you
keep
never do it, then you're
right.
and
Yeah.
if you do, like even if it's this bit, it's like so the difference between. So that's a big piece of it, and that's kind of why I incorporated coaching, because
Mm-hmm.
I have been blogging at Ms. Mindbody for 10 years. I will note that sometimes I was only blogging once a month.
I think that
To
still
me,
counts. I'm going to go ahead
slow and
and
steady wins the race.
yeah, no, I think that's good.
um, but that is why I incorporated the coaching piece in it. It wasn't until I started working with a coach that I kind of worked on the belief that goes along with it, because you can tell yourself that it matters, 2 minutes counts, but if like on a subconscious level you're like, this doesn't really work. Like I'm just in crisis, so I'm going to do it, but I don't really see how it's going to really get me where I want to go. Do you know what I mean? It's not going to get you where you want to go. I mean, you could start off without the belief, but you have to. That's one thing you kind of have to become aware of, is not just like, what am I experiencing, but kind of what am I feeling.
Yeah, and having a partner in the process, like you talked about. I mean,
Yeah,
you
some
hired a coach, you
objectivity.
work as a coach.
Yeah.
Not just sort of like doing it on, like, is this having any impact? Should,
Yeah.
forcing yourself to do it every day. I think it's really helpful to have teammates,
Yes.
partners.
Objectivity.
Yeah, that's very good.
But just kind of along this line of thinking, one of my favorite quotes from Thich Nhat Hanh, he's the Vietnamese Buddhist monk who wrote The Miracle of Mindfulness. He's like
Amazing.
Gandhi. He's a little like Yoda, like he's a living treasure.
Yeah.
His quote is, when we take good care of the present moment, we take good care of the future. It kind of speaks to that. Like, all you need to do is take care of yourself right now. You are going to be setting yourself up down the road. You don't even have to think about that, though. Like, it's cool.
It's just, the now moment. The just wash the dishes moment. I call it a lot, which is from Byron Katie. I don't really want to wash the stack of dishes, but that's what my present moment entails right now.
Yes. And that totally counts as a mindfulness practice.
Totally.
It can.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit more about how you got into yoga and mindfulness and coaching as well.
Well, I had my first exposure to yoga from late night TV. I was 22 years old. I was living in San Francisco. I had just graduated from college, and I got a job through a temp agency. I was working at a stockbroker firm. I don't even know what to call it. Like, it's still not my world anymore, but
good times.
In San Francisco, totally. The markets there are on East Coast time, so I had to be at work at 5:45 in the morning.
Wow.
And I was miserable, and I was kind of like feeling like I was in jail. Every day I would sit down at my desk, and I felt like I could hear the door close behind me. And so I was up late, in denial of the fact that I had to get up in just a few hours. I was watching TV, and I ran across the movie Midnight Express, which is about the young American male who goes on holiday in Turkey and decides to smuggle drugs out of the country, gets stopped at the border, and thrown into Turkish prison. And, subconsciously I was like, oh, I could kind of identify with that feeling, like no control over my fate. I could just see myself for the next 40 years sitting at my desk being miserable. And there's one scene in the movie where there's no dialogue. He and his cellmate are doing sun salutations. The sun is streaming through the window. They're like these beautiful shafts of light, like the interior. His cell looks gorgeous. And they're handsome. They have no shirt on. They're sweaty. But they're just like, I'd never seen anybody move that way before. And the look on their face was just like they were totally free. They were not in Turkish prison. And I was kind of like, if that could help them, it could probably help me.
Right.
But I actually was working, but the only time that I could go to yoga class was at 2:00 at my gym, because I was a real gym rat at the time, because I thought I had to, like,
Yeah.
I have a balance ball chair, by the way. So
very nice. I was, spraying over there. I was wondering.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, poor me, I can't go to class. But I mean, it really lodged in me that, like, I got to learn more about this yoga, but I just was kind of in that limited mentality of like, but I have to go to my job, and so I don't have these possibilities open to me, until one day I loaned my car to a friend. It got rear-ended. Nobody was hurt. I received a check in the mail for $11,000 for my car because he was rear-ended. It was no fault of mine. And I quit my job. And the first thing I did was go to yoga.
Very nice.
And that's when I started practicing. That's when I read my first Deepak Chopra book. I did my first fast. Like, it was a huge awakening for me. And that was in 1995. So almost 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And I so I used to use yoga as kind of an antidote to work and sneak out at lunch so that I could be more productive in the afternoon. And then gradually, like, the scale started to tip from, like, work with a little bit of yoga to the tip.
Yeah.
I ended up doing my yoga teacher training and quit my job because I thought I wanted to be a yoga teacher, but the training actually gave me the confidence to do what I had always secretly wanted to do, which was write. So I became a journalist, and I launched Ms. Mindbody, and and everything was really great. And then I had 2 kids in 2 years. I'll try not to make this too long. I have kissed the boy in the stone, Brooke. You have to tell me if I'm, like, talking too much.
No, you're not at all. This is
okay.
This is a good story.
Then I had 2 kids in 2 years. After I had my first baby, I pretty much kept it up. Like, I got to yoga class once a week. I was practicing every other day at home kind of thing. I was like, oh, this isn't so bad. And then I had my second, and he's adorable, and he's so sweet. He's such an easy baby, but I was completely overwhelmed. And I was like, oh, I can't do anything that's not involved with keeping these kids alive. So I gave up yoga, meditation, anything mindfulness-based, cold turkey, and then this shit really hit the fan. Like, things just got so much worse.
Yeah. It's a good test of, like, how is this thing benefiting me? Well, when it goes away, things suck.
It was valuable information. It was certainly not something I would want to go through again. It just, like, showed up in every part of my life. My weight, my sleep, my relationship, my job. Like, I was just adrift.
Yeah.
And the way I found back in was I started to meditate while I was nursing him to sleep. And it was simple. I would count my breath. I would count my exhales to 10. When I got to 10, I would start again at 1. And it was like maybe 10 minutes a night. But I just couldn't believe how much that small thing really started to turn the tide. And then I had always been a fan of small practices built into your day. That's what my first book was, the Anywhere, Anytime Chill Guide, which I wrote when I was pregnant with my daughter. Oh my, how we teach what we need to learn. Like, I had no idea how much I was going to need that in my years to come. But, I really believe it doesn't matter what your practice looks like as long as it has some level of consistency. It could be a minute.
Yeah, I mean, that's a beautiful example of a simple practice. Count your breath at night when you're putting your son to bed, when you're nursing him.
Yeah. It's like, I used to hate bedtime. I looked forward to bedtime. Because bedtime is just like, as you know, like, feed them, clean them, get them in their jammies. Oh my God, we're late,
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, sweet, bedtime.
Yeah, it's the time to, like, pause and chill out. Yeah, that's great.
Don't ever discount the power of tiny things. If I could just drill that into everybody's head.
I know, tiny things. I have clients ask me all the time, if I'll give them, like, home self-care stuff to do. They're like, so what do I have to do? 40 minutes a day? Well, I'm like, if you can do this literally for 90 seconds a day, most days, it's going to be amazing. Like, you're going to really notice a radical difference. 90 seconds. So and there's challenges in building in habit, which is why I love what you did. And I usually tell people to combine it with something they already have. Like, I'm going to put my son to bed. I'm going to nurse him to sleep.
Right.
How can I combine it with this thing that I'm already doing?
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be the like, and we live in a culture where we're obsessed with watching like rapid results, rapid dramatic results. It's like the whole reason
Yeah.
why the Biggest Loser show exists,
Oh,
which is my
yes.
nemesis, and I hate it so much. But it's like, let's just watch just extreme measures, extreme inhuman measures,
Yeah.
get people to this extreme difference. And it's like tiny, kind, gradual, but consistent
Totally.
measures
Yeah.
can make radical differences. It's not going to happen overnight, but also it's going to kind of happen overnight. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's going to feel like it at one day you're going to wake up and be like, whoa, how
Yeah,
did that
like
happen?
the big difference in like whatever, now my, you know, herniated lumbar disc is completely healed. Yeah, maybe
Mm-hmm.
that's going to take a long time, but the way you experience your life, that part can actually happen pretty quickly.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely agree. And it's really hard it's kind of, it's tough to grasp how ingrained that gotta go for it big time is
Mm-hmm.
in our culture.
Yeah.
And in our minds.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, yeah, people automatically say, what, I need to do this 40 minutes a day? Like,
I know, I'm
no.
like, really? Because I don't have 40 minutes a day to like make sure I do the
Right.
same thing every day for 40 minutes. I mean, I could make that time, but it's an unnecessary extreme.
Yeah, and it's just going to set you up to not do it
Right.
because who's going to get motivated to spend 40 minutes a day?
Yeah.
It's it speaks to that whole belief. Like, is it even possible? Do you really believe it's possible to do something simple and gentle for yourself consistently and have it pay off?
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I think that's sort of what's behind the whole totally revamp your life, go torture yourself, work out till you puke.
Yeah.
Spend 2 hours doing what, you know what I mean? Like, I just think that has kind of evolved because we don't have the belief.
I agree. Yeah. I think we just don't believe it's an option to treat ourselves with kindness and to make subtle, consistent changes and have anything happen. I think it's a real cultural blind spot.
Yeah.
Big time.
So when you do start to do that stuff, not only do you benefit, but you model it for other people in a really subtle, energetic way. It's not like you have to say, watch me as I treat myself gently for only a few minutes a day and experience major transformation. But, it's just like you magnetize others toward it.
Mm-hmm.
You awaken the possibility in their mind that like, oh, how is she doing that?
Yeah, right. Maybe I don't have to torment myself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe I don't need to add more suffering to the suffering equation.
Right. Yes. So it becomes very important to do for yourself because we're not intended to be walking around feeling like crap all day long.
Yeah.
But it's also very important that you do it for the people that you come in contact with, particularly the people that you love and live with, but other people too.
Yeah.
I work with a lot of moms, and they're kind of like, well, isn't it selfish for me to begin to do things that I want to do? And I'm like, no.
Yeah.
Is it selfish for you to teach your children that they can do what they want to do?
Right. Or that self-care matters, and also how that radiates out. I mean, I was just talking with a dear friend of mine who's expecting her first baby this spring. So, she's asking me all the advice questions and I have to dig back like nearly 7 years to remember. But, one of the things I said to her, I'm like, look, your care, your self-care, I'm sorry, it's the most important thing, because how you are, like, living your life and how you feel about yourself, that is what your kids are constantly, they don't need to hear the words you're saying. They need to watch how you're experiencing your life. And I don't mean it in some selfish, like, I'm going to go party all night, you guys don't matter. I mean it in a very, like, right, grounded and embodied way, where you're paying attention to your own self-care. That's what kids learn, and it's like you put on your own oxygen mask first on the plane when they're like telling you the thing. That doesn't happen, nothing else is going to happen,
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just so important.
It is, for sure. Yeah. So thank you so much for chatting with us. And I just want to go over, because you have yummy projects. I mentioned your longstanding, I'm totally in admiration for Ms. Mindbody, that has been running for so long. And you have these great events that I mentioned from time to time. I don't know how often you're doing them, but Kate's Yoga Playhouse, which always makes me want to like sign up and go play.
It's really fun.
Yeah, seriously.
It should be like Kate's yoga, have fun while lying around and talking house.
Yeah, right, exactly.
It's like,
Yeah, because you have a lot of the coaching. I mean, it's not just a yoga weekend. I should mention it's
yeah.
yoga, but also
It's
the coaching and.
Yes, it's one day. So yeah, so the whole reason that
Oh,
I
okay.
do
Sorry, I'm like
meditation.
committing you to weekends.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, no, someday.
I have a
Someday when we
subconscious
visit
drive to
people.
hang out with you for a whole weekend, I guess. I'm forcing you
I
into
would love that. Oh my God, I would love that, and I do. I want to start making them weekends, and perhaps it won't be too long.
Right.
Note from the universe, noted.
Right.
I'm gonna, like, write it down. But you know, to me, the whole purpose, really, I mean, I love the things that yoga does for you in terms of flexibility and digestion and sleep and mood and all that stuff. Like, it's amazing, it's incredible. But the real reason that I do it is to hear what I really think about stuff. So I feel I would be remiss if I asked you to take a day out of your life to come do some yoga and meditation and then not do something with the clarity that it creates, because it absolutely does.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a woman on the lunch break at the last retreat call her husband and be like, honey, we got to talk tonight. Like,
Yeah.
it's time. You know, just, it's really about, so the coaching comes into, it's great to go have a lovely day and get all pampered and blissed out and da-da-da, but then you don't want to go home and stub your toe and be like a wreck all over again.
Right.
You definitely want to go home empowered to be like, this is really what's important to me, what I want to do differently.
Yeah.
So I don't know how often I have them either. I'm considering having one at the end of January, maybe not until March. I live in Providence, so they're in Rehoboth, Massachusetts, not too far away.
Yeah.
But if anybody is listening to this and think that sounds intriguing, come to MsMindBody.com and, like, Ms. Jackson if you're nasty. Sign up for my newsletter.
Fabulous. And your new book comes out in January with Ellen Barrett.
Yeah.
So tell me about that.
I have an advanced copy here. I want to hold it up.
Yes, indeed.
I'm proud.
Oh, good.
Proud
you should
mama.
be proud. Very nice. It's exciting
It is.
to have when you have, like, the tangible thing.
Ellen. She's totally awesome. I know. Like, look, we worked on it. That's me.
Yay!
And this is all about
I lost
really
my
getting
headphones,
into your
so I
cycle.
can't hear you right now. Give me one moment.
That's okay.
People can hear me, but I can't hear you. My enthusiasm for your book overcame me. Okay, I can hear you.
That's good. I love it.
Yeah, right. Cheerleading. So sorry about that. Tell me about the.
So 28 days later, diet is about syncing your diet, your fitness, your lifestyle activities, your wellness pursuits to your cycle. Because we're not the same creatures, us women, from week to week.
For the ladies.
And we have different requirements. It's not like we can just, like, cut calories and work out every single day and expect our bodies to be cool with that, because they're just very dynamic. And sometimes we need rest. And it's kind of cool to know, like, when to go for it, when to really push it, and when to just cool out. And we also weave in a lot of mindfulness and yoga and, like, wisdom from Ayurveda and yoga and traditional Chinese medicine. So it's kind of like, it's cool. It's like, it's the book we wanted to find at the bookstore, but it wasn't written yet.
That's great. That's really great.
Yeah.
Very helpful. It is a cycle. It's called a cycle for a reason. Like, things
ebb
and flow.
And it's kind of cool because you get to the end and then it just starts again. So I don't know. It's really been a fascinating journey because we really advocate in the book that you track your cycle. And so I've been doing it since we started writing the book. And I just can't believe how, like, kind of, even though we change and it can sort of feel like we're on a roller coaster, it's really so quite predictable. I mean, when you start to track it, it's like, oh my gosh. I mean, I know when I say, kids, time to brush your teeth, and they say, no, and run away. And I'm just, like, shooting white hot rage daggers at them, that I'm, like, within hours of starting my next cycle. Like, it's really, it's kind of incredible.
Yeah. And as a mindfulness piece, really nice to know. Yeah, like, physiologically, there's something going on.
Honey, it's time for you to do bedtime, because otherwise I might ring our children's neck. So we're just like not wanting to brush their teeth. Do something so normal.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much for all of your good work and also for talking with us. I think that the mindfulness piece and the small, consistent changes piece is so important to living well in our bodies.
Yes. And thank you. This is really cool. I met Brooke because she was my rolfer a long time ago, and it was very, very therapeutic and informative, and really, like, got me looking even more at the body and alignment and stuff like that, that just continues to blossom. So it's really cool to be here with you.
Thank
And
you.
if anybody is considering working with her, you absolutely should. Like, no lie.
Well, thank you very much.
Scouts honor.
Scouts honor, yeah. And that was, gosh, like maybe 10 years ago or approaching that we worked together.
You were just pregnant, I think.
Oh, really?
You got pregnant
Okay.
right after.
So,
yeah.
7 years ago. 7 years.
Yeah, like 8 years.
Yeah.
You weren't pregnant yet. Okay.
Right.
Now that we've established that.
Now that we've,
yeah,
right, I know, timed back with the child. All right, well, thank you so much, Kate. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Brooke. All right, bye.
Bye.